Okay, so for the first question, this question has to do with concatenation, and you just have to remember some concatenation rules that I actually just wasn't paying attention to, so I got this question wrong. Basically, we have a string called str that is assigned AP, and then in the next line, CS is concatenated to it as well as 1 and 2. Now, what's important to note is that because there's no parentheses around 1 and 2, these will be considered strings by the okay, starting all over. So we have, for the first question of this section, we have a string str that is assigned AP, and then the string cs, and then 1 and 2 are concatenated in the next line, and then that new string str would be printed. Now it's important to note, because there's no parentheses around 1 and 2, that to the computer, 1 and 2 are considered strings. So this wouldn't make sense because CS was concatenated after the declaration and initialization of the str as AP, so this wouldn't make sense, and therefore this wouldn't make sense either. Now, this wouldn't make sense, one, because there's no space at the end of AP or at the beginning of CS, so there shouldn't be a space here, and again, as I was saying, these two numbers would be considered strings, so they would just be put together, not added. So the only answer choice that makes sense here is APCS space 1 and 2. And this is because the operand 1 is treated as a string, so it's appended to ABCS. And 2 is also considered a string, so it's appended to APCS1, and that's what we get. This is the result. So just pay attention to those rules. Okay, so this again has to do with concatenation, and we get a code segment, and we have a string called string dessert that is equal to the string pie, and dessert is concatenated and appended to straw, dessert, and berry. So we know that pie is going to have to be at the beginning of this new string. So this wouldn't make sense, this wouldn't make sense, and this wouldn't make sense. So A, C, and D can just, doesn't have to be there. Now we know that, and because, so now we're stuck between these two. Now, this one doesn't make sense because in this line of code, we have straw. We know it's being, it's the plus equals operand, so we're already gonna have pie here, and then it appends dessert in the middle here. So the only one that would make sense is pie, straw, pie, berry. This is also another concatenation question, and it's asking which of the following code segments would produce the phrase "Good morning, sunshine." And in this case, it's all three. This is, here it appends good with a space bar in between morning and sunshine separately, so that makes sense. And in this, in number 2, the string str is assigned good, and then it just uses the plus equals operand and adds morning and sunshine. And the same thing here, it appends it, but instead it just appends morning in the middle. So that one is pretty simple. Okay, so now we have another code segment, and this requires you to just pay attention and remember the methods that belong to the string class. So here it says consider the following code segment ABC123 as assigned to string 1. string 2 is C, and string 3 is 3. Now, this will print out the index of 2, the index of 3, and the index of 1. Now, the index of method takes in a part of the string and finds the index of it within the bigger string. So in this case, since string 2 is equal to C, it's going to find the index of C in 1. And remember, when you're finding indexes, it starts at 0. So this would be 0, 1, 2. And so that's why 2 is the index. So you can automatically disregard D and E because that just doesn't make sense. And then if you think about it logically, I actually just skipped to the last one. And this is asking to find the index of the string 1 in the string 2. And this doesn't make any sense because C is way smaller than ABC 1, 2, 3. So therefore, when it's executed, you'd get -1. So and then for the middle section, so that means you can get rid of B. And in the middle print statement, the index of 3, you just count from the beginning, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember those rules about indexes of strings, you start at 0, and that is why A is the correct answer. Okay, so then we have another code segment that involves strings. And we have a string called word, it's equal to September, and then str1 uses the substring method word.substring 0, and then the first parameter is 0, the next is 3. Now, the substring method, the parameters are the start of the start of the substring you want to get, and then the end non-inclusive. So basically this would get you the first 3 letters of what you want. And then in this line of code, word.substring, word.length -1, and then system out.println string 1 plus string 2. Now, this wouldn't make sense because the expression word.substring returns the first 3 words, sep. So anything that doesn't have sep in it, you can get rid of. So that would be A and B. And to get like those two, to get ep, you would have to use 1 and 3 as the parameter arguments, as the first number is inclusive. Now this would be incorrect because word.substring word.length -3 returns the last 3 characters of word or bur, not the second to last and the third to last B, because the one parameter substring method goes to the end of the string. So that wouldn't make sense either. Now this is incorrect because this line of code here returns the last 3 characters of the word or bur, not the last 2 characters, ER, which is what this indicates. So the only one that would make sense is this one because it returns the first 3 characters, sep, and the word.substring word.length -3 returns the last 3 characters, bur, which would get you the string that's printed. So we have another code segment, again dealing with the substring method. Now string S1 is equal to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, all uppercase. And the next line of code is having S2 assigned to the substring obtain, so 6 and 7. So if we look up here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So because this is non-inclusive, it will only return G. So if we look down here, we can automatically just get rid of A, B, A and B, because we know that since this is not included, it's going to return or return G. Now, the next line of code, S3 equals new string. So this is creating a string object called ABCD, ABCDEFGHI in lowercase levels. Now, S4 is obtaining a substring from the object S3, and the parameters are 4 and 5. So if we look up here, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So because again it's non-inclusive, it's going to return E. Now string S5 is obtaining a substring between 2 and 3. So if we look 0, 1, 2, 3, again, it's non-inclusive, so we're going to get C. So the only thing that would make sense here is this one. Now, the reason why this is incorrect is because the method called str.substring xy returns the substring beginning at position x and then ending at position y minus 1 rather than ending in position y. I'm saying that's why I kept repeating it's non-inclusive, so you have to remember that. Now, this is incorrect because the code segment does not cause any errors while compiling. Okay, so now we have a method called calculate, and it is it returns a double, and its parameters, it has one parameter, double x, and it returns x plus 1.5. So the following code segment calls the method calculate in the same class. What, if anything, is printed when the code segment is executed? So here we could create a object from the double class. And then we run calculate. So this is incorrect. The result would be printed if the value passed to calculate was 6.5 instead of 7.5. This is incorrect because this would be the value if 7.0 was passed, because 7.0 plus 1.5 is 8.5, 6.5 plus 1.5 is 8. That's why these are incorrect. And we know that 7.5 was passed. This is incorrect because we know that what's the value that will be printed, it has to be a double because the return type is double. So the only one that would make sense is 9.0. 7.5 is passed. Adding it to 1.5 would get you 9.0. And it would be returned and then printed. This is incorrect because this would compile without errors. Okay, so the next question, we have a code segment, and we are creating a integer object as a called original. Now, I just want to say it's important to recognize when the difference between int and integer, and this is a reference type, whereas int with the lowercase is a primitive type, so that is why it's important to recognize that. But anyway, so we have an object called original with a value of 8, and an integer called first that runs original.int value times 2, and then another object called second that runs original.int value plus 2, and then it prints those two values separated by a string, a blank string. Now, this would be incorrect. This result would be printed if both first and second were assigned the value of the original, but we know that's not true because if we multiplying a number obviously changes the number unless it's 1, and adding a number changes the number as well. And that is why this is also incorrect, because we know that the first value has to be changed. There's no way that we would get 8. This is incorrect because these values are only if both first and second added 2. So this doesn't make sense. And answer E is incorrect because this result would be printed if second was assigned the value of first and val plus 2. So that doesn't make sense. So the only one that makes sense here is this one, because if we have the original value of 8 multiplied by 2, that's 16, and the original value 8 plus 2, it's 10. So that is the only one that makes sense. Okay, so we have another code segment. Consider the following. Integer num equals new integer 15, int n num.int value. Which of the following statements best describes the type and contents of num and n after the code segment executes? Now, this would be incorrect because it says num is an integer that contains the value of 15 and n is an int that contains the value of 0. This is not true because we initialized n and then declared it with the value of num, which is 15. This is incorrect because it says num is an integer that contains the value 15, and m is an integer with uppercase that contains the value 15. The variable n is declared as an int as a primitive type, not an integer. That's important to recognize that. Now this is incorrect. Num is an int that contains the value 15. Now we know that num was assigned as a integer with the uppercase. And n is not assigned the value of 0, it's assigned the value of 15. And this is incorrect. Num is an int that contains the value of 15, again, because num is an integer with the uppercase, and n is not an integer. So the only one that would make sense here is B, and an assignment cannot change a variable's type. So n remains an int, and it gets inside the int value returned by num, and by num.int value, which is 15. Okay, which of the following expressions represents x raised to the power of k minus j, where x, k, and j are properly declared and initialized int variables? So this is just reviewing the math class and knowing some of the methods in the math class. So math.power and math.absolute value are what's being highlighted here, because this is being raised to an exponent, and you can see the absolute value lines. So you need to be familiar with the parameter arguments that are needed to use these methods. Now, I know that the math.power method has two parameters. The first one, as you can see here, is the base, and the next one is the exponent. So I know that when I'm going to select my answer, I have to have x in the placeholder of the base, as it is here, and x minus j in the placeholder of the exponent. Now, the next part of figuring out which one is the correct answer is knowing that there are absolute value signs here. So we can automatically get rid of this and this. Math.abs on the outside would not make sense in this situation because we know that math.abs only uses one parameter and we're not raising k minus j. This just doesn't make sense, and this doesn't make sense either. So the only ones that would make sense would be C or D. E would make no sense. There's no notation math.pow.abs just doesn't exist in the math class or in Java. Now this would be incorrect because it would be replacing x, instead of x as the base, would be k minus j, and that is not what it's asking. So the only correct answer here would be C. Okay, so for this one, the code segment below is intended to randomly print one of the values 2, 4, 6, or 8 with equal probability. So int val is missing code, val time val multiply equal. Okay, so we have a code segment. In the next question, we have a code segment that is supposed to randomly assign either 2, 4, 6, or 8 with equal probability. So it's asking which of the following could be used to replace the missing code that's up here in the assignment and initialization of val. So this would be incorrect, and that is because math.random times 8 returns a double value in the range between 0 and 8, including 0, but not including 8. This value cannot be assigned to an int, because this would return a double. So we already know that this would return a double value between 1 and 5, not including 5. So first of all, it wouldn't include all these numbers, and it would return it as a double because we haven't changed the type. Now, this wouldn't make sense. Math.random returns a random double value greater than or equal to 0 and less than 1. So by multiplying the value by 4, it produces a random double integer that is greater than or equal to 0 and less than 4. When a double value is cast to an int, its integer is obtained. So casting math.random times 4 and to an int assigns to val 1 of values from the set 0, 1, 2, 3. Multiplying val by 2 produces the values from the set 0, 2, 4, and 6, which is not what is intended. And basically, this is the same concept as the one here. It would casting math.random multiplied by 8 plus 1 will assign val to one of the values in the set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Multiplying it by 2 would get you 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, which is not what is intended. So the only one that would make sense is this. You multiply by 4 plus 1, you get a number that's greater than or equal to 1, less than or equal, but less than 5. Then when you cast it, it assigns the set 1, 2, 3, 4, and then multiplying it all gets you the set 2, 4, 6, 8. So then you can randomly assign those numbers correctly. And for the last question of this section of multiple choice, we have a method that is intended to return the area of a square whose side lengths are s units. The area of a square is its side length times itself. So we have this square, it's going to return a double, and the parameter argument is double s. And this just means you have to be familiar with the math class. So again, see, we're going to be using the math.pow class. So we know that the area of a square is times itself. So the only one that would make sense is D. The POW method is a static method defined in the math class. So the class name and the dot operator are needed to invoke the method, and the call raises the first parameter s to the given power by the second parameter 2, producing the square of s. Okay, so that's it for this section. I hope this helped, and yeah.